Hey guys, Mr. Broud coming to you from the shop here at Panther Automotive. And when we last left off, we did the lesson 8 in the GW hands-on maintenance and light repair. And to review the engine oil filter and change lesson 8, let's remember what our objectives were: to perform an oil change and change the filter, use the proper fluid, and per the manufacturer's specifications. Always best answer when we're talking about tests is OEM specs. So whatever they recommend for filter and for the fluids, proper weight and proper amount. All right. Reset maintenance reminders as required. Our other objectives are to verify the oil level using our dipstick, describe why engine oil needs to be changed, and last but not least, identify the components of the lubrication and cooling systems. So we're going to take a couple of minutes here to talk about some of the tools and PPE that we're going to need. So I'm going to grab you down here and we're going to take a look around at what we got here. All right. So we have got the proper oil and filter and amount. We've got some towels, obviously some personal protective equipment with the arm shields. You might need that. Remember, oil changes are very, very hot. Should be done warm so our oil flows freely. We've got a couple of different sprays here to clean up any kind of residual oil that may be left off. All right. And then we got our proper tools. We've got ratchet, our sockets, oil filter wrenches of different kinds. We've got a cup type, we've got a band style, we have the claw, and we have our, of course, oil filter pliers. These are some of my favorites, and you guys have all recognized those. Again, we have a pig mat, and then, of course, in the background here, we have our oil drain. Make sure that that is not overfull, so when we drain oil into it, we're not overfilling that. Okay, so we're going to go through the steps and the pages of lesson number 8 in GWHOMLR, or hands-on maintenance and light repair. Remember, we've got to have our safety glasses, proper PPE, and want to talk about the first couple of pages. So on page 3, we're talking about engine oil, and its primary job is to cool and lubricate, and it does that by creating a thin film between the metal parts, and that reduces friction. That friction can cause heat, and that engine oil is 80% roughly base oil and about roughly 20% additives, and its lifetime is not infinite. As it starts to break down, it loses that ability to lubricate and cool, and what comes next is a breakdown of those oil additives and that base oil, and we end up with some trouble with friction, creating more heat and premature wear in our engine. So we always want to make sure that we use a high quality oil, synthetic oil, and you want to make sure that you have the right API service and the right weight of oil or viscosity. All right, so our API service right here is an SN, and this is a 5W30. Remember, the W stands for winter in there, and we want to check that on our vehicle as well, making sure that we have the right viscosity of oil, the right capacity. And on page number 3 here, it asks us for our year, make, and model, the engine, and the VIN. Remember, those are always going to be important for everything that we do. Moving on to page number 4, it talks about where the oil is going to go in the car, and that's the fill cap. We look at the fill cap. Most of them today not only will say what the viscosity is on it, but it may even indicate to you that it's synthetic, and somewhere is going to be a dipstick as well. We want to check that oil level before we raise the vehicle and change and drain the oil. I want to know if the oil was low. What does it look like when it's on the dipstick? What kind of maintenance is being done with this vehicle? So on page number 4, it talks about that. All right, moving on to page number 5, some oil change tools. Again, proper PPE, our sleeves, our gloves. Want to make sure that we have some rags. All of this oil is going to be hot, and when we take the filter off, we're going to use a filter wrench and or a filter claw or a band clamp. This does have a spin-on type filter, and that spin-on type filter will be hand tight when we put it back on, but it'll be nearly impossible to remove with just our hand strength. They do have a little check valve in there that once it's locked down in place, it's very, very difficult to remove that with just our hands. So we will need a tool for that. Moving on to page number 5. And then on to page 6. Again, there are cartridge filters that require a special kind of socket to get those. Most cartridge filter have a plastic cover, so to get those off, we got to have a special size socket for that. And you will see those more and more on vehicles as we go away from some spin-on filters, but you're going to run into both, and you got to have the tools to do the job. And always gives us an opportunity to, buy a new tool. Moving on to page number 7. Page 7, need to know oil change information. And we're going to pause right here. All right, and here we are back at page number 7 on our lesson 8. Oil change and filter change, and some need to know oil change information. So we want to make sure that we know what the viscosity is supposed to be before we ever start doing this. And usually you can warm the vehicle up. You want to make sure that the vehicle is warm, and you can warm the vehicle up while you're looking these things up. All right, again, all data, library.alldatapro.com for us here at high school. We want to make sure that we use the proper information, and we put the vehicle information in. Always use the VIN number for that. And we want to go ahead and get the maintenance information off the left-hand side of the screen, the maintenance information for fluids. So we want to know exactly what the capacity is supposed to be, as well as the weight of the oil, and make sure that we record that. And whether we need to use synthetic oil. GM also requires now that you use the specified oil called Dexos, which is above and beyond the API service. General Motors has got some good pull in the Petroleum Institute world, so they have come up with their own designation called Dexos. So if you ever see that, you know what that means. And we also want to know what the drain plug torque is. Drain plug torque, again, with the torque wrench on this particular vehicle is going to be 15 foot-pounds. Electronic torque wrench, best answer for it, but click style torque wrench will also work. And the oil filter part number, we want to make sure that you have a good quality oil filter and the oil filter part number is correct, when the mileage was, and we should be ready to go with all of that information plugged in. So we do require a 5W30, 5.5 quarts of oil with the filter. Always change the filter. Never do an oil change where you just drain and fill. That is not the way a professional would do that. We also want to make sure that we know what our drain plug torque is. Like I said, 15 foot-pounds for this particular Saturn. And I do require, as a customer, that I have synthetic oil changes, and since we're going to be changing this on our vehicle here, this is my vehicle, I want to make sure that I use a synthetic oil, and my choice is Mobil 1. So another brief pause, and we'll go on to page 8. Okay, so we're ready to get started here. Remember, we want to check the oil level and remove the drain plug. When we do remove the drain plug, we want air pressure to be able to push down on that fluid. Again, fluid warm, and we want to make sure that that air pressure can actually push down on the oil. So we're going to remove the oil fill cap and place that off to the side. I know in the instructions for lesson 8 it says to put that up in the hood hinge there. Please don't do that. One, it can get oil up there on your wipers and stuff. And if you did forget about it and you crunch that, you could break the oil fill cap. Best thing I can say is put it next to your oil and your filter box. That way it's definitely there for you. So we want to check the oil level first. Finding the dipstick, usually they're orange or yellow, well marked, and for the most part they're going to be by the fill cap. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to remove the fill cap and check the oil level, and we'll go on from there. So again, we're going to remove the fill cap here, all right, and some of them don't want to come off very easily. All right, so again, as you can see, this does take 5W30 oil. All right, and this is a symbol that's going to mean something to us later when we're starting the vehicle. Again, we're going to be looking for that icon on the dash if it does not have a gauge. If it does have a gauge, or both a gauge and a light, we want to make sure that we develop oil pressure when we start the vehicle. And that light right there, that icon in a light format, is going to go out when the engine develops engine oil pressure. So that's the oil light. If that light ever comes on while you're driving down the road, you got a problem. And we're going to check the oil now. And again, finding the dipstick, very easy on this vehicle. We have a yellow grabber here, and we're going to check the oil level and see what the oil looks like. Remember, if it's black, that doesn't mean it's bad. All right, if it's black and thick, why then that viscosity has broke down. This actually looks like a good 5,000 miles of wear and tear on the oil, and it looks to be in good shape. It is time to change it. It's starting to lose its viscosity, and we want to go ahead and refresh that with new, fresh synthetic oil. And again, we're going to double check the oil level and note any loss of oil. And we're right in the safe mark, and that's perfectly acceptable. Okay, we're underneath the vehicle. We've raised it up safely. Remember, support and raise the vehicle safely on all four corners. Make sure you know what you're doing before you raise the vehicle up. And again, this is all hot. We want to be careful. We got our oil drain plug here. Make sure you're not taking it out of the transmission. And remember the rule, ask three, then me. Ask your friends, hey, is that the transaxle? Is that the transmission? Is this the engine oil drain plug? Make sure everybody agrees before you go ahead and move forward. All right, we're going to go ahead and pull that out, and I'm going to break it loose before I raise the oil drain up to that, and we'll get to raising this up in a second. All right, make sure you have the right size socket. Remember to try your socket on there, and always check. The one that you think fits, try the next size smaller. Everything's metric, guys. All right, so on vehicles of today, everything's going to be metric, and I tried a 14 and it felt like it was a little loose, so I grabbed a 13, and again, that did fit. So always try the next size smaller. When you find the one that you think fits, try the next size smaller. Releasing this, again, when you want to make sure you're in the off position, left to loosen. All right, break that loose, nice firm. All right, you should try to pull, but I know the tension of this is only 15 foot-pounds. Shouldn't take a super amount of effort. We definitely want to make sure that the drain plug is in good shape before we go reefing on it. And if it's not, please stop. Ask your friends, hey, what do you guys think of that drain plug? We better go ask Mr.Broud, and I'll come over and look at it. All right. So again, on this oil drain, there is a tension ring down at the bottom at the base. All right, and we want to raise this up. Okay. And tighten that tension ring up and get this in position where you want it. Predict the stream. All right, and we're going to remove this. And again, the method is, if you're taking that drain plug out, the idea is to not get a whole bunch all over. This is the exhaust pipe right here. This thing's screaming hot. You want to be careful. All right. And there's no foul, by the way. If you let this drop down inside there is a screen. It's not going to go down into Never Never Land. You won't have to go fishing or anything like that. But you want to pull that out, have a rag in the other hand ready for that to be receiving that nice warm drain plug. All right, and again, the idea, nothing on your hands, right? Go ahead and take that out and dry it off a little bit. Watch your stream coming out of there. And again, you want to inspect the drain plug. Look at the head. Is the head in good shape? Is the threads in good shape? You betcha. And then the gasket itself is in good shape. Now you bring this to me and I want to check that. All right? You guys all agree that it's in good shape. You bring it to me and you say, here, this is in good shape, Mr. Broud. And I will agree with you or disagree. We'll check it out and we'll go on from there. All right? Okay, so the oil is pretty much drained out and it's time to take the filter off. Remember, arm guard here. This thing's right up next to the catalytic converter. It's super hot. The catalytic converter, again, is going to be screaming hot. So we want to make sure that we protect ourselves. And in this case, we are going to actually put the drain plug back in first and torque that. So we're going to need our socket, and we're going to need our torque wrench, and we're going to put our drain plug back in and torque it down. Okay, so we're down to nothing but a drip here, and everything's copacetic with that. So we're going to go ahead and put that on, thread it on by finger, and I am going to dab that off with a little bit of the residue that was on there. And again, while we're doing our oil change, there's a lot of other things that we should be inspecting. For example, there is some oil residue here. You want to make sure and note that on the customer's work order. Find out where that's at. Wipe it off. And we want to make sure that you indicate that on the work order. You know, if we got to clean it off, we use a cleaning product, and we can use a dye. We can also use, there are some powders that you can put on. Most of those start off with cleaning the affected area and finding out where that leak is coming from and making sure that you make your customer aware of that. Hey, you got an oil leak, it's coming out of the timing cover, around the oil pan gasket, something like that. You want to make sure and let the customer know that. Last thing you want to have is a customer that comes back, hey, my car's leaking oil. Oh yeah, we noticed that. Well, why didn't you tell me? So a good professional is going to be in front of that and tell the customer, hey, look, we did notice an oil leak. Yeah, I know. I got a spot on my driveway. Well, we cleaned it all off for you, and we can put some oil dye in there, and you can come back in a week and we can check it out. Hey, that'd be great, thanks. You know, that service might cost, it might be free or complimentary. I will say that most of the time, if you're going to use a dye and an ultraviolet light, there is some cost incurred with that. But if you just clean it all off for the customer and then say, hey, bring it back in a week and we'll take a look at what, you know, the clean and the dry look like and where the wet of the oil is, you may be able to just lay your eyes on it and be able to tell. But nonetheless, back to our drain plug and 15 foot-pounds of torque. So here we got our electronic torque wrench, and we're going to put our socket on there. And we got this set to 15 foot-pounds. All right. And it's not much, 15 foot-pounds. It's 2 fingers. All right. So when you're pulling on this, again, 15 foot-pounds, we got the tension there, and